I take the last train home most nights after closing shift. One night, an old station worker pulled me aside and told me something I've never forgotten. If the train ever stops between stations and the lights flicker 3 times, do not look out the window, no matter what you hear tapping on the glass. I thought he was joking. 2 weeks later, I found out he wasn't. I worked closing shifts at a downtown restaurant, which meant I almost always caught the last train home, usually somewhere around 1 a.m., always nearly empty except for a handful of other night shift workers scattered across the cars. One night, waiting on the platform, an older station worker sweeping nearby struck up a conversation. He'd worked that line for over 20 years, he said, and he wanted to tell me something, since you ride this late enough to actually need to know it. He said if the train ever stopped unexpectedly between stations, and the lights flickered exactly 3 times, I should keep my eyes down, ignore anything tapping against the window, and under no circumstances look outside to see what was causing it. I laughed, assuming it was the kind of urban legend transit workers probably told every regular rider to pass the time. He didn't laugh back. He just repeated it once more, slower, then went back to sweeping like the conversation had never happened. The first night. For nearly 2 weeks, nothing unusual happened. I rode the same late train, same mostly empty cars, same tired commute home, and started to forget the conversation entirely. Then, on a Tuesday night, the train stopped suddenly between stations, well before we should have been slowing down. The overhead lights flickered, once, twice, 3 times exactly, before settling back to their normal dim glow. I remembered the station worker's warning instantly, and for reasons I still can't fully explain, I trusted it completely. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor of the train car, hands gripping my bag tightly, heart pounding harder than the situation seemed to warrant. After a few seconds, I heard it, a soft tapping against the window directly behind my seat, rhythmic, deliberate, unmistakably not the sound of rain or debris. It continued for almost 30 full seconds before stopping abruptly, the train lurching back into motion immediately afterward as if nothing had happened at all. I didn't look. I don't know what would have happened if I had, and some part of me is deeply grateful I'll never find out. Talking to other riders. Shaken, I glanced around the car for the first time since the stop. 2 other passengers sat near the far end, both staring down at their own phones or laps, both clearly having heard the same tapping, both clearly having made the same choice not to look. One of them, a woman probably in her 30s, caught my eye briefly and gave a small, tired nod, the kind of gesture that said, without words, that this wasn't the first time she'd experienced exactly this. I asked her, quietly, once we were moving normally again, if this happened often. She said maybe once or twice a month, always the same pattern, unexpected stop, 3 flickers, tapping at the windows, and that she'd learned, the hard way, from a friend who used to ride this same line, exactly why you should never look. I asked what happened to her friend. She said he looked once, out of curiosity, nothing more, and that he'd stopped riding the train entirely after that night. When I asked her to elaborate, she simply said he wouldn't talk about what he saw, only that he described it as, wearing a face that wasn't finished yet, and that he moved to a different city within a month, leaving his job and apartment behind without much explanation to anyone. The second time. I avoided the last train for almost a month after that conversation, taking rideshares home instead despite the cost, until money got tight enough that I had no real choice but to go back to the late train. The second incident happened almost exactly the same way, sudden stop, 3 flickers, tapping against my window specifically, as though whatever was outside had a particular interest in my seat rather than the car as a whole. This time, though, along with the tapping, I heard something else, a voice, muffled through the glass, saying my name, calm and quiet, the way someone might say it if they were simply trying to get my attention rather than frighten me. I kept my eyes down. The voice repeated my name twice more, patient, almost gentle, before the tapping and the voice both stopped together, the train resuming its normal speed a moment later. I didn't tell anyone about that part, the name, for a long time. I didn't want to consider what it meant that whatever was out there already knew who I was. The worker again. I ran into the same station worker a few weeks later, waiting on the platform during a normal, uneventful ride home. I told him what had happened, including the part about my name being called. He didn't seem surprised. He said the tapping had been happening on that line for as long as he'd worked there, decades now, always following the same 3-flicker pattern, always stopping the moment the train started moving again. He said the ones who looked never really came back the same, even the ones who physically survived the encounter. Something about them changed permanently, something you could see in how they talked, how they avoided windows afterward for the rest of their lives. I asked him if he knew what it actually was. He said he didn't, not exactly, but that he had a theory. Whatever it was couldn't come inside the train on its own. It needed you to look first, needed that moment of eye contact or acknowledgement to actually cross whatever boundary kept it outside the glass. Until you looked, you were simply hearing it. The moment you looked, you were letting it in whatever sense it needed to actually reach you. I asked why it knew my name. He didn't answer that one at all. He just told me, again, slower this time, to always keep my eyes down, no matter how long the tapping lasted, no matter what it said. I still ride that same last train most nights, and the stops still happen occasionally, though I've genuinely lost count of how many times now. I've gotten disturbingly used to it, the sudden halt, the 3 flickers, the tapping against glass I refuse to look toward. Sometimes it says my name. Sometimes it doesn't. I've never once looked to find out what would happen if I did, and I don't plan to start now, no matter how long I ride this line or how routine it eventually starts to feel. If you ever find yourself on a late-night train, and it stops somewhere it shouldn't, and the lights flicker in a pattern that feels deliberate rather than mechanical, keep your eyes down. Whatever's tapping on the glass already knows more about you than you'd want it to. Don't give it the one thing it's actually waiting for.